Well, hi there. I been thinking about this for I guess it's almost 2 years now, and it's kind of been something I've been wanting to get off my chest for a while. And I'd stopped playing 14 for a while there, as I often do. Usually, when a new expansion comes out, I'll play the new expansion for a while, and then usually when patch like point 2 comes out, 4.2, 5.2, whatever, I usually take a break. I'm just kind of burnt out and I need to stop. And I've rejoined recently, and again, I've just been wanting to talk about for a while. So Shadowbringers is a beloved Final Fantasy XIV expansion. Everybody loves it, but I'm not really a big fan of it. It's actually been my least favorite expansion so far. And so I wanted to take a little time and tell you why that is. So just to give you a little background about me, just so you know where I'm coming from, I started playing the game, let's say, I think Realm Reborn launched in August of 2013, and I want to say I picked it up in like January of 2014. So I think either Leviathan or Ramu had just come out, was like the most recent stuff when I had cleared the Praetorium. So I got to the end game. So I've been playing since Realm Reborn, not since the very moment it launched, but, very close to that. So I played through all that, Heaven's Word, Stormblood, Shadowbringers now. And so I've been playing the game a long time. My main class is a white mage. That has been my main class throughout, the entire time I've been playing the game. I like healers a lot, but white mage has always been my favorite. I don't really care for scholar, and I've grown on astrologian lately. I'm actually currently raiding as one with my raid group, but so I've been a white mage, and so I am Rudros Caliphus is my character name. I'm on the Siren server, which I think is on the Aether data center now. And I did my first raid tier back in, at the end of Stormblood. So that would be, the Omega, the Alphascape, I think it was called. Yeah, so that was when I got in with my first raid group. I don't remember if we cleared that tier or not. I know we got to Omega MNF. I don't remember. I think we might have run out of time. We had a lot of issues of just being able to consistently raid or whatever. But then, we carried on in Shadowbringers. We cleared the Titan raid tier. And then again, I bowed out for the second tier. And so now we're working on Eden's Promise, all that stuff, the current raid tier. And so, I know the game. I know what I'm doing. I know how the mechanics work. I know how to do high-end content. And I don't say that to brag or to come off as an elitist. I just want people to know, where I'm coming from. I'm not someone who just, picked up the game a month ago. So when I criticize this game, as I'm about to do when I criticize this expansion, that, it is coming from a place of someone who has been playing it a long time. And actually, that's probably part of my frustration with it. So first thing I want to touch on is really my biggest issue with it, which was from a gameplay perspective. And again, keep in mind, I'm a white mage. So for me, the gameplay has become simpler and simpler, as we've moved forward with the expansion. And that is intentional. They want to make it easier to get into. They want to make it more accessible so more people can play, which I understand. That's fine. You want to get a bigger player base. And sometimes I think that's a really good thing. Back in the day, there was a lot of mechanics that there was no indicator for. You just had to guess how it worked. Whereas nowadays they have a lot of visual indicators. So for example, the stack mechanic, which is a very common one, which is that, a boss will target a single player with a move, and if that player takes it by themselves, they'll just die to it. So they have to soak the damage with everybody. The more people who take the hit, it spreads it out amongst everyone. They call that the stack mechanic. And there's this nice, really clear stack marker they've added. It's these big yellow arrows pointing in, to the middle of the screen. That didn't used to be there. I think that came in either Heaven's Word or Stormblood. And things like that, I actually think are a good thing, because before then, you just had to basically figure it out. We died to that. Well, let's try it again, and we'll stack and see. Okay, that's what did it. Or you had to have watched a video, and then it. But I've always felt like, when you watch a video, that you're not learning anything that way. Someone just told you, hey, do this thing. You didn't have that moment of realization to figure it out. But again, some of that stuff I thought could just be kind of pointlessly frustrating. So I think things like that to make the game more accessible are really good. Things I don't like are having the classes get simpler and simpler. And again, I can't speak to every class. I'm mainly going to talk about White Mage because that was my main. And how simple White Mage has gotten has just been very disheartening and disappointing, and it led to a really bad time in the Shadowbringers expansion. So it started in Stormblood. Heaven's Word is my favorite expansion, for story reasons, but for gameplay reasons, because it added things. Everyone got 5 new moves. White Mage got these new moves, and it was the first, they added all these things without taking away. But Stormblood was the very first time they took things away. I'll never forget that first time I booted up Stormblood for the first time, and it's this new expansion, and the first thing I see is that, a bunch of my moves are crossed out on my hotbar. There's stuff I just don't have anymore. And you're like, wait, this is an expansion. I just paid money to get more, and I'm seeing right now all this stuff that was taken away from me. Now, again, some stuff, wasn't used very often. Some stuff we still don't use, but is there, for example, like Repose. I don't know why Repose is still there. I don't know why Sleep is still a thing in this game, because nobody uses it. You can't be using any bosses, other than that one in Brayflox, the original version. But so, I lost Stone Skin. Yeah, we got Divine Benison. The Lily system was really bad in Stormblood, and Plenary Indulgence was really bad. I actually liked its very final version, the way it was tuned up, during the Alphascape run, but they changed it again in Shadowbringers. And then here in Shadowbringers, we lost Arrow 3, which I thought was one of the coolest. Visually, it was really neat. It was this big AoE dot I got to put on everybody. And then we also lost Protect, which I thought was a huge thing. There was always this Protect argument of, Protect is just something you put on at the start of a fight and then you ignore it for 30 minutes. But again, to me, it had a little bit of extra strategy, was that if somebody died and you raised them in the middle of a fight, you had to reapply Protect. So that was just another thing for the healers to think about. And with Arrow 3, I had multiple dots to keep track of. I had the Arrow 3 dot, I had the Arrow 2 dot, and then I had my normal spam, and that's not a whole lot. That's 2 dots and a normal attack, but it was still more than it is now. And in Shadowbringers, they take away Arrow 3. So I have 2 things. I have Dia, which is a 30-second dot, which, that's the other thing. It was boosted to 30 seconds, which in a way is nice because, again, you don't think about it as much, but also just makes it more brain dead. That, I set it and forget it for 30 seconds, and I'm just spamming Glare over and over again. And it's really boring, and I don't think the lilies are very interesting now yet either. A Flatulous Misery is really nice as this big crit hit you can do after you've cast 3 of them. But there are so many fights. I'll be, if I didn't purposely choose to use them, my lily gauge is full of 3 lilies just sitting there, that I don't need to use. And that was another thing too, is healing has just felt so meaningless and so boring lately. I remember Plenary Indulgence. I think it was before the Alphascape upgrade, but there was a version of Plenary Indulgence where you hit it and it applied a confession to everybody, and then if you healed them, it made the I don't know. The point was that in order to do it, they had to have been missing health. They had to have been. So I remember there was a few fights where there's 2 healers, and both healers use a big AoE, and the other healers goes off right before mine, and they are on their own able to heal the party to full health, and then my Plenary would miss. It wouldn't even apply because, they're not injured anymore. And I just felt so useless, why am I here? If this one healer can do all that completely by themselves, why do we need 2 of us? Why am I stuck on this boring role? When people do unsyncs in the party finder, that's the first thing they'll ditch is healers that, let's get more damage in there. There was one of the Shadowbringer dungeons I remember running with one of my tank friends, and she's a really good tank, so credit to her. I know the average tank probably couldn't do this, but I didn't even heal her. I didn't heal her in the whole, she's doing these big trash pulls, pulling all the mobs at once. I didn't have to heal her, where you just, I'll just spam holy and knock them down. And again, in a way, it's okay, cool, we got through this really quickly, but at the same time, there's this feeling of so why am I even here as a healer? This tank can just heal themselves now. It's so silly, and again, it was very boring and repetitive, and Shadowbringers, I can honestly say, was the first expansion that I wanted to quit. When I was playing through it, I got about halfway, I was around level 75 or 76, I think I was in Ilmeg, and I was just I just don't even want to play this, and again, it's not fun. I'm running to mobs, I've got these little single-player instances, and I cast Dia, and I spam Glare for 30 seconds. I'll hit a size once every time in there, and that's it. Dodge an AoE and spam Glare for 30 seconds. And, I've played the other classes. I think Dragoon's still really fun. I still find Red Mage to be very enjoyable. So I think the DPS are still quite enjoyable, even though some of them have gotten simplified too. But again, as a healer main, and specifically as a White Mage main, I was so bored than I had ever been before. And again, that was really frustrating, and it really took me out of this expansion. It really made it hard to get into it when you're not engaged, when you're bored by the stuff that's going on with it. And here's the other problem with it too. The problem is that boring gameplay tends to it amplified the other flaws of the game. Stuff that some of this has been there a long time, and maybe I'm either just I've seen it so much now that I'm finally getting tired of it, or again, maybe it was that because I was so bored by the gameplay that a lot of this stuff really came into the forefront of my mind. So, for example, cutscenes. Cutscenes are everywhere in this game, everywhere, and I'm pretty sure they've always been like this. But again, I think I'm noticing them more. There's just so much filler in this game. I always find it interesting that people think this is like the best Final Fantasy ever, and it has these great stories. It's like, well, parts of it are good, yes. You know, when they really try and they really bring like the meat of the story to bear, yeah, I usually think it's pretty good. But I mean, all the things you have to do in the meantime, though, that's still part of the story, and it's a bunch of filler. In every cutscene, you know, everyone has this discussion, and then they all turn to each other, and they all nod, and then they all turn to the left, and they all walk off screen. Like, every time, you have to watch every single character nod to each other, and then exit the screen together. Like, just cut that down. I don't understand. You know, and doing just something as simple as, like, the Beast Tribe quests. They'll just have 5 paragraphs of dialogue that you don't care about, that I don't care about. And again, ShadowBringers was the first time that I started just skipping cutscenes. I skipped dialogue unless it was the main scenario. Like, I just don't care. And, you know, and I've played this game for 4 expansions now. I guess technically 3 expansions. That it's meaningless too. You know, I've read all that stuff for years, and I know there's nothing to be gained from it. At least I don't think so. Nothing that's interesting. Like, no, let's just get to the meat of the subject. I just want to get past all this filler. And yeah, the cutscenes are everywhere. I was doing a side quest mission the other day, one of the new ones they released in 5.4, and every, you know, except the quest, you know, cutscene. Go to this area. Got it. Okay. Goes to a cutscene. Go to this area. Goes to it. It's just like, oh my goodness. And like, I get it. I'm not unsympathetic to the devs. I get that cutscenes are a very easy way to, let's be honest, pad the game out. You know, that doesn't require them to create some new battle with new designs, with new damage mechanics. You know, all they have to do is they just plop your character into the middle of a scene, and they have all the characters in the game, you know, act out one of the many scripted emotes we've all seen over and over and over again at this point. They do the, hand gesture, or they all do the, you know, big nod or whatever. So I get that it's really easy to fill this game up with cutscenes, but again, it just makes it more boring. Like, it's just, especially when it's stuff I don't care about, you know, when it's these random side characters, I'm like, I don't even know who you are. Like, you know, spoilers for ShadowBringers here, you know, if you haven't played through the main story of ShadowBringers at this point yet, and I'm talking about the very first, you know, part of it, not additional stuff that was added on, spoilers. But so, you know, the Crystal Exarch's identity is revealed, and I remember when he was revealed, I legit was like, who is that? I have no idea who that is. And like, he seemed vaguely familiar, but again, it'd been so long since I played the Crystal Tower part in Realm Reborn, I'd totally forgotten about that guy. And then, you know, once they started talking, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of remember him now. But just, and you know, it's funny, it was clearly supposed to be this big emotional moment of like, oh, the reveal, who is he, right? And I was just like, I don't know who he is. So yeah, all those cutscenes have just been, you know, a real pain. And again, I feel like overall, I feel like they're taking more from us with this expansion. So for example, there's no job quests in this expansion. It's the role quest. They replaced it with the role quest. So, you know, instead of Paladin and Dark Knight and Warrior all having their own separate job line like they did in previous expansions, now it's just, well, there's the tanking role quest line. And it kind of made me sad to hear all the people who defended that, who were like, well, you know, they're adding all this other stuff, And so, that makes it simpler on them. And their excuse was, we'd rather give you like 4 role quests that are really memorable and good than all these job quests. And again, I'm not unsympathetic to that. I understand that as the game gets bigger and you add more and more jobs, that yes, that means if you're going to do a job quest line for each one, think of that's that much more. But that's also your job, and this is an expansion. It's something we paid for. Like, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. And now for the record, I did like the role quests. Like, it really gave, some weight to the Warriors of Darkness, who I didn't really care about them when I saw them. I think it was during the post-Heavensward stuff. But I did really like their storyline, and it was enjoyable, sure, but I still felt cheated that, leveling Black Mage, he gets to do the role quest, but then leveling the Red Mage just has nothing to do. Red Mage has no quest to get. So, again, whatever their reasons, however good, it's still they are taking more away. Like, for what should be an expansion, an expanding world, they're taking more away. Okay, now you've got even less. You've got less moves. You've got less this. So, that was all really frustrating. Kind of some other things is that I wasn't personally a big fan of the first. It was fine. It felt very disconnected, and obviously, to a degree, of course it did, right? Because it's technically, another dimension or another world or another plane, however you want to think about it. But, you can't walk from an area on the first to Mordona. You can't walk from an area on the first to Ishgard. So it's a whole totally separate place, which is fine. But again, it made it feel very disconnected to me. So, and I kind of wonder, too, what they're going to do for future stuff. Like, it'll be weird to say, it makes sense to kind of go back to Limsa, because Limsa is still in Eorzea to talk to, the Admiral and such. But, like, what are you going to go back to the first for? Like, I don't know. Again, it just kind of has that disconnection for me. And none of the new areas have really caught my imagination in quite a while. I think the last new area that I thought was like, oh, wow, this is a neat place, was the Azim Steppe in Stormblood. And, I kind of liked, it had just this really big savanna feel. It was so wide and open, and I loved Soken's daytime score there, with the little vocal choir singing in. That was neat, but, like, even in Stormblood, that's the only one that sticks out to me. The Ruby Sea was kind of interesting, and I did like Kugane as a town, but, like, I didn't care for the locks at all. I didn't care for the peaks. I didn't care for, I can't remember, the very first area you go into after you pass Belsar's Wall. Whatever that is, that's connected to Ralgar's Reach, but they all just felt like they're these big, dry, desertish like mountains, and that was it. Even like Yangxia, like, again, these areas just haven't stood out to me. And again, I'm not unsympathetic. I get it. There was a lot of areas in the base game, which to me were all very memorable. And the more and more you add, it's hard to become creative, right? Like, we've done mountains, we've done snow, we've done water, we've done, hot areas. Like, what else can you really do to really make it different? So I get it, but like the Tempest, I just thought was such a lame final area. Like, the Tempest and the locks. Ozzy Slaw, for example, at the end of Heavensward, even though I don't really enjoy going there, that area was unique. It felt like a final area. You had this really kind of crazy mechanical looking area, all these separated islands that, you had to fly to, and just, it felt like okay, this feels like the final area of the game. But again, the locks just felt like another area, and the Tempest did too. The Tempest was just like, that's it. It's just kind of this big open watery place. Like, yeah. So again, didn't really like, Amarang is what? It's a big desert. Ilmeg is kind of neat. I like the big castle in the center and the lake, but beyond that, it's, again, feels like just another area. Lakeland, it doesn't really feel any different than any of the other, Kalusia. Like, Yulmore is kind of unique because of the way it's set up with the tower and the upper level, but Kalusia doesn't feel very unique. So that's another thing too, is like, it's been so long since I've had an area that I'm like, well, this is fun to explore. Like, I want to know, what's over that ridge? What's over that way? Whereas this one felt more like I was just like, all right, let's just get these quests done and then move on. And again, I think that also stems from just the gameplay being boring. And, let's touch on that with the gameplay being boring too. Another big change they made was that basically tank aggro doesn't exist anymore. For anyone who just joined in Shadowbringers, funny or not, there was a time when, like, as a tank, you actually had to maintain your aggro. And your healers and sometimes your DPS could actually pull aggro off of you, and they would risk pulling monsters off you. And we had tools like Shroud of Saints. Gosh, I miss that name. That's so much better than Lucid Dreaming. Shroud of Saints or Dragoon's Elusive Jump, we had ways to, take away this enmity, but it basically doesn't exist anymore. The tanks just generate so much enmity, and they change their tanking stances. Like you don't have to worry about that anymore. And to go along with that, there's no more. There used to be this thing called TP in the game, where especially like as a DPS class, monks and dragoons, they would use this TP. It was a cost they had to do for their moves, kind of like the mages still have the MP. Dragoons and everything, they had to use this TP. So because that's gone now, in the dungeons, in just the random, you can just AoE spam to your heart's content. As a Dragoon, you can just Doom Spike a million times over into your Sonic Thruster combo, and then that's it. And again, the tanks, you're never going to pull off of them anymore, so that's not even a threat, that's not a consideration. And again, I'm on of two minds of this. On one hand, yes, I will admit, it's kind of fun. It's fun to not have to worry about that. To just, I'm a bard, let me just quick knock. Bard is my main DPS, by the way. And I just quick knock a zillion times in a row. It's kind of fun. It's very mindless. But in a way, I also kind of miss the challenge that the old ones presented of like, okay, I've got to make sure I have my TP at the right time. I'm going to sing the Tactician song, Mage's Ballad, whatever it was, and whichever version it was, to give the party extra TP. And now I'm going to hit my Raging Strikes, and I'm going to do my combo. And yes, it was kind of a lot more nonsense you had to deal with, but it was also satisfying, at least I thought so, that it was okay, wow, we cleared this room of mobs really, really well, efficiently, based on the limited number of TP we had. Yes, it was more hoops you had to jump through, but again, there was a satisfaction to that. Okay, we got that done. We did this big pull, and we were able to AoE them down before everyone ran out of power. Whereas again, don't get me wrong, there is something fun to just, cool, no limits, boom, 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 but that also makes it more mindless, and that does make it's not satisfying anymore. I legit turn my brain off in those, throw up something on Netflix on my tablet, and I'm just watching them, I'm not even paying attention to the dungeon run, because I don't have to. It's not difficult. And that's the other thing, too, is we've got this big split in the player base, in that you have a lot of newer people, and you have a lot of people who are really good at it. And again, I understand the position Square Enix is in, that you've got some people who struggle with these dungeons, who really gives them a tough time, and who really struggle with some of what I think are some of the simpler mechanics in the game. And again, I don't say that to come off as elite or to say that I'm better than these people, because, I'm not. I've just been playing a long time. I get it. And those people deserve to have a good time, and they deserve to be a part of the game. But it makes me understand from a developer standpoint, like, what do? You have players like me who we can go through these dungeons with our eyes closed, and you have other players who they struggle to get through these normal, forget extreme, forget savage content. They can't handle any of that. They're struggling with this. So I get it. It makes it really hard to cater to both of those. And I guess I just wish, what I would like to see in the future is that, let the dungeons, let the main story and all that, let that be content everyone can enjoy. You have extremes for a reason. You have savage for a reason. That's the time when you can pour it on. But again, make the difficulty those separation and instances. Don't make the difficulty tied to the jobs. Don't make the healer, don't make White Mage so simple that, yes, a newer player can enjoy it easily, but someone like me, a veteran, gets really bored because, cool, now I'm spamming a single button this whole time. There's always been this healing fight of they either need to make the healing so intense that basically you do nothing but heal the whole time, which they'll never do. They will never do that because, again, these people who struggle in the dungeons, they will not be able to keep up with that. And I don't think that, honestly, would be a great thing anyway. But then give us more interesting things to do as damage. The point is, there's this concept of pure healing. And if I legit didn't use any of my offensive spells in these fights and I only healed when I needed to, even in these savage fights, we're doing Cloud of Darkness the other day, there's a good 30 plus seconds multiple times in that fight. I don't have to heal anything. I don't have to heal anything. If I wasn't doing damage, I'd just be sitting there with my arms crossed. That's boring. That's not fun. The tanks and the DPS, they get to keep pouring on the power, make it fun for the healers to do it too. So, yeah, again, I get it, and I am sympathetic, and I do appreciate some of the new changes they have made, but I wonder if they have gone too far in their search for accessibility and their search for making everything easier, that they've really taken out a lot of what was a lot of really fun challenge in the game. Some final things on Shadowbringers I want to mention too is that one is the music. I like Soken a lot, man. Going through Realm Reborn, it was really great to hear a lot of those themes. I have every single soundtrack he's gotten, and he's kind of always done this, but I really noticed it in Shadowbringers was that he really reuses a lot of themes. Or maybe he's not the one who assigns the music to the cutscenes. Maybe, the designer or the storyteller does that. But I just hear the same themes over and over again. And again, I have his soundtrack, and when I listen to it, I'm like, he will just basically do remixes of themes. A lot of the nighttime themes. It's just the day theme, just a little slower. And again, I get it. He's got a lot of tracks to compose for a lot of different things, but I've really noticed how much it's like, man, stuff is really kind of repetitive now at this point. And the other thing is, too, he hasn't really blown me away with a trial theme in a long time. The trial themes used to be just like the standouts. Like, I'll never forget the first time I heard Fallen Angel when I took on Garuda for the first time. I was like, what is this? It was just musical magic to my ears. And, you had Good King Mogomog and the Shiva theme, I think, is... Again, the trials all had very distinct... Even if you didn't like them, maybe you thought some of them were annoying, like Leviathan. But they were unique, they were distinct, and I remember Ravana's kicking in with that great violin solo, and man, Thoradin, the song Heroes that kicks is so good. But Stormblood, Susanos was fine. I did enjoy Susanos and Lakshmis. They were still kind of unique, but Shadowbringers, Titania's I didn't think was very good. I don't even remember what Innocences is. That whole fight was just boop, out of sight, out of mind for me. I don't know why that fight was not memorable at all. So yeah, I've kind of been missing that great new musical sound to be like, wow, that's the new Soken thing. But yeah, just nothing's really caught my ear. And then finally, I didn't really care for the new raids. So, okay, so here's the thing. Talk about fan service for a second, right? So, this game is fan service personified, which is a Final Fantasy fan. I've been a lifelong Final Fantasy fan. I've been playing it since I was 5-6 years old. I loved it, okay? I love all the fan service. That's one of the things I thought, especially after, the letdown that Final Fantasy 13 was. They didn't even have the victory fanfare. I can't tell you how happy I was to play 14 for the first time. I level up when I hear dun, 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 dun. I was like, oh yeah, the victory fanfare. Oh, and there's Moogles and Chocobos. It's such a love letter. But I like that. So I loved the Omega raids because I like the 5 references. I like the 6 references. I will still maintain that the Phantom Train fight is one of the coolest fights in the game. Probably my favorite fight in the whole game. Sometimes my girlfriend will watch me play and she's like, it's so confusing. I can't tell what's going on screen. But even she was engaged watching that fight. She thought it was so cool. You've got this big train, woo, with the whistle, and it would slam the tracks and pull up beside you and unleash the ghosts. It was such a neat fight. And yeah, so I liked that fan service. I'm a huge 6 fan. 6 is the first one I ever played. So it was so cool to get those callbacks. And then, here comes Eden, the new raid for Shadowbringers, and I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be all this 8 stuff, and they've got the 8 theme when you're exploring it, and then Eden's the very first fight, and they even took the time to recreate Eternal Breath. How neat is that? Even though, yeah, it takes a minute to watch every time. But then the rest of it, they rehash the primals. You go to Leviathan, you go to Titan, Shiva, Ifrit, Garuda, why? Why are we doing all these... And again, yes, they made the fights very different. The Titan fight, the Savage Titan fight with the triangles and all the spaces. Mechanically, it was very satisfying. It was interesting, but it was Titan again. It was just why am I fighting Titan again? Why am I fighting Leviathan again? I've already fought all these guys, and they all already had really great, memorable fights. So I don't know why they felt the need to rehash that. You're going with Eden, you've got all this Final Fantasy VIII stuff you could pull from, and then they don't do any of it. And this last tier, I didn't care at all. I think it was the third fight of the second tier. It was hey, who's the boss of this going to be? Let's make it a big triangle. It was just a big triangle. It was okay. So those were really unsatisfying. And I don't care for the Nier Automata crossover either. And I like Nier Automata a lot. I really enjoy that game. I've got a platinum in it. I just don't think it fits in this world, and it's really boring, and it's bland to look at. I wasn't even a big Tactics fan, but I still really enjoyed the Return to Evil East stuff. Especially, I really like Orban Monastery. I thought they had a really compelling story through the gameplay, like that moment when Ultima, the High Seraph, is crushing that bubble and Ramza appears, and he, now is not the time to stay our blades, Eorzines, or whatever. That was all really engaging. I really liked it, but like the Nier stuff, like the Puppets bunker, and it's boring to look at. It's really dull and drab. I don't find the mechanics very interesting. So like, yeah, it's kind of like on all fronts, Shadowbringers hasn't had a whole lot that I've enjoyed. Now, credit where it's due that, like, I did think Titania as a fight visually was pretty interesting. I thought Hades was really neat. I really liked Hades. Of course, Emmett Selk is a good character. And that's the thing, like, from a story standpoint, that's the other thing, too, is that people say, like, oh, this is the best story by far. I don't think so. I think this is just your typical Final Fantasy XIV story, whereas the high parts are really high and very good, and the low parts are really low and boring and bad. Like, if I just think about kind of the end confrontation with Emmett Selk and Hades, I think very positively of it because all that stuff is really good. But I think of all that filler and the Ratika Greatwood and, most of the stuff in Amarang, and just like none of that was that interesting to me or that memorable. Like, so yeah, I guess that's always kind of the weird thing about the story to me is that people act like, well, this story's beyond, is so much better than all that. I was like, really? Again, it's like, it's got its great parts, and it's got its lame parts, and it's got a bunch of completely forgettable filler. So for me, the story was like, yeah, it was fine, but it's hardly the best. And I was certainly much more interested by the stuff with the dragons and Heavensward. I could do that in a separate video, go on about, why I liked Heavensward or whatever, Heavensward, wherever. But, and to kind of wrap this up, here's the thing. Had I enjoyed the gameplay more, had I been actively engaged as a white mage, as a player, maybe all this other stuff wouldn't have bothered me as much. It's very possible that because I was so disengaged from a gameplay perspective that it brings everything else down. Like I said, it was a lot easier to notice all those flaws, like, God, all these cutscenes are the exact same over and over again when you're already checked out anyway. So yes, that's very valid. And the thing is, too, but, like, where do they go from here? We don't know about the next expansion yet. Maybe we'll hear it in the coming month or so, but, like, they're still worried about hotbar bloat. We're not going to get more. We're going to lose more actions. We just will. I know that. And by all accounts, it's going to get simpler and simpler. We haven't had a new healer since Heavensward, and they didn't give us one this expansion, and I don't really have much... I'm not convinced they're going to give us a new one because I don't think they know what to do. I don't think they know what to do besides having a shielder and a healer. You have a proactive healer and a reactive healer, and it doesn't seem like they know what to do beyond that. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening to me rant, and I know a lot of people love Shadowbringers, and to make it clear, I don't hate it by any means. It has many enjoyable things about it, but I can easily say it's my least favorite expansion so far, for all the reasons I listed above. So if you love it, feel free to let me know why you love it. What's your main job? Does that really have a big influence on you? Maybe it doesn't. Or if you too have found yourself, maybe it's not as great as everyone said it would be. Feel free to share your experience as well. So thank you for listening, and walk in the light of Heidelin, my friends. See you in Eorzea.